So I got this article by Chris Hedges that I just want to read out into the world. Chris Hedges has already said it, but I didn't know that John Cusack actually read Chris Hedges. Did you know that? John Cusack, the star of Con Air and the star of Identity and being John Malkovich. The politics of cultural despair. In the end, the election was about despair. Despair over futures that evaporated with deindustrialization. Despair over the loss of 30 million jobs and mass layoffs. Despair over austerity programs and the funneling of wealth upwards into the hands of rapacious oligarchs. Despair over a liberal class that refuses to acknowledge the suffering it orchestrated under neoliberalism or embrace New Deal type programs that will ameliorate this suffering. Despair over the futile, endless wars, as well as the genocide in Gaza, where generals and politicians are never held accountable. Despair over a democratic system that's been seized by corporate and oligarchic power. This despair has been played out on the bodies of the disenfranchised through opioid and alcoholism addictions, gambling, mass shootings. Stop! Man, stop! I got Fred keeps on messing with my feet. Hey man, stop! Quit. This despair has been played out on the bodies of the disenfranchised through opioid, alcoholism addictions, gambling, mass shootings, suicides, especially among middle-aged white males. You're going to have your close-up in a minute. Chill out. So, Fred's a puppy. Morbid obesity and the investment, the son of Asata. Asata is another puppy that grew up to a dog. She barely survived a flooding. Man, you got to quit doing that. Okay, I'm putting you in the cage. I got to read this, and he keeps just biting me on my Achilles heel. So, as much as it's all fun and playful here, here's Fred. Hi. Hi, everybody. I'm Fred, named after Fred Hampton. I like to ruin the shot. So, when there's only one more bar on the video camera, so I don't even know if there's going to be enough power. This is such a good article because here I'm, feeling like, what the fuck? I thought Kamala had it in the bag, so therefore it would have been easy and smart to put pressure on her about the genocide because now is the time to strike. You strike when the iron is hot. And so the iron was hot right now. I didn't really want her to lose because I think that Donald Trump is going to empower a whole bunch of terrible forces in the world. Elon Musk, I gotta say Elon Musk has been super scientific, super smart. He's also pushing the First Amendment. So there's some hope actually with having an Elon Musk in the cabinet or having him as an advisor. This despair has been played out on the bodies of the disenfranchised through opioid and alcoholism addictions, gambling, mass shootings, suicides, especially among middle-aged white males, morbid obesity, and the investment of our emotional and intellectual life in tawdry spectacles and the allure of magical thinking, from the absurd promises of the Christian right to the Oprah-like belief that reality is never an impediment to our desires. These are the pathologies of a deeply diseased culture, what Friedrich Nietzsche calls an aggressive, despiritualized nihilism. Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party, along with the establishment wing of the Republican Party, which allied itself with Harris, live in their own non-reality-based belief system. Harris, who is anointed by the party elites, 77% of Democrats and 62% of independents support an arms embargo against Israel. Why would 77% of Democrats and 62% of independents support an arms embargo against Israel, and Kamala Harris didn't do shit about that? Nancy Pelosi once said that even if the entire American society collapses, we would still finance Israel. That just shows how strong our commitment is for Israel, the open collusion with corporate oppression and refusal to heed the desires and needs of the electorate. The electorate neuters the press and Trump critics. These corporate puppets stand for nothing other than their own advancement, the lies they tell to working men and women. Oswald Spengler in The Decline of the West predicted that as Western democracies calcified and died, a class of moneyed thugs, people such as Trump, would replace the traditional political elites. Democracy would become a sham. Hatred would be fostered and fed to the masses to encourage them to tear themselves apart. The American dream has become an American nightmare. The social bonds, including jobs that gave working Americans a sense of purpose and stability that gave them meaning and hope, have been sundered. The stagnation of tens of millions of lives, the realization that it will not be better for their children. The predatory nature of our institutions, including education, healthcare, and prisons, have engendered, along with despair, feelings of powerlessness and humiliation. It has bred loneliness, frustration, anger, and a sense of worthlessness. When life is not worth living, everything becomes a pretext for ridding ourselves of it. This is Emil Durkheim. The father of sociology. It might be on suicides. When life is not worth living, everything becomes a pretext for ridding ourselves of it. There is a collective mood as there is an individual mood that inclines nations to sadness. For individuals are too closely involved in the life of society for it to be sick without their being affected. Its suffering inevitably becomes theirs. It's no measure of good health to be well adjusted to a sick society. Decayed societies where a population is stripped of political, social, and economic power instinctively reach out for cult leaders. I watched this during the breakup of the former Yugoslavia. The cult leader promises a return to a mythical golden age and vows, as Trump does, to crush the forces embodied in demonized groups and individuals that are blamed for their misery. The more outrageous the cult leaders become, the more cult leaders flout the law of social conventions, the more they gain in popularity. Cult leaders are immune to the norms of established society. This is their appeal. You had Dan Quayle, misspelled potato, campaign ended. Howard Dean says, "Hiya!" Campaign gone. You had Dukakis driving around in a tank with a silly hat, campaign DOA. Yet Donald just keeps doing dumb shit after dumb shit after dumb shit. It's like, that's Donald. Cult leaders seek total power. Those who follow them grant them this power in the desperate hope that the cult leaders will save them. All cults are personality cults. Cult leaders are narcissists. They demand obsequious fawning and total obedience. Obsequious is just a sycophant, blind obedience to. They prize loyalty above competence. They wield absolute control. They do not tolerate criticism. They're deeply insecure, a trait they attempt to cover up with bombastic grandiosity. They are amoral and emotionally and physically abusive. They see those around them as objects to be manipulated for their own empowerment, enjoyment, and often sadistic entertainment. All those outside the cult are branded as forces of evil, prompting an epic battle whose natural expression is violence. We will not convince those who have surrendered their agency to a cult leader and embraced magical thinking through rational argument. We will not coerce them into submission. We will not find salvation for them or ourselves by supporting the Democratic Party. Whole segments of American society are now bent on self-immolation. So here I'm thinking I was being sad, but they're saying that Donald was actually elected by a bunch of sad motherfuckers. You invested in a society which is declining, and because you've invested in the society and you're taking it personally, you're going to get this godlike person. And unfortunately, you cannot be a godlike person. And so what happens with godlike people? Well, then they just start destroying everybody because that's within their power. They can't have immortality. They no bars. I only got 10 minutes in. I still got more reading to do. Whole segments of American society are now bent on self-immolation. They despise this world and what it has done to them. Their personal and political behavior is willfully suicidal. They seek to destroy, even if destruction leads to violence and death. They're no longer sustained by the comforting illusion of human progress. losing the only antidote to nihilism. Pope John Paul, through work, dignity, self-fulfillment. The Pope castigated unemployment, underemployment, inadequate wages, automation, a lack of job security. Where is this God thing? They seek a God, but unfortunately when it comes to a God, here we are. Americans who feel like they've been treated like human refuse. But the impossibility of being a God, as Ernest Becker writes, leads to its dark alternative, destroying like a God. This self-immolation is what comes next. So, he's not the cause, but he's a symptom of our diseased society. He's saying that American society is diseased. And then he's calling for a general strike which brings about a nice society. He was saying that we can give people an alternative to the corporate indentured Democratic